When you come through something, you're successful. It's difficult, but you get through it. You go through it. You win through. Fall through is the opposite. If your plans fall through, everything's a disaster. Nothing works out. You aren't successful in some kind of way. So hopefully your plans don't fall through. Hopefully they're all successful and you come through any difficulties that you face. Now, if you sail through your exams, you go through them very easily, very quickly, you pass with flying colours. But if you scrape through, then the idea is that you only just pass. You're a borderline pass. And so you only scrape through. You scraped through that exam. If you pull something off or carry something off or bring something off, then you achieve it. You sort it out. You do it well. Again, it's the opposite of fall through. Because if you say, I didn't think we could carry this off, it means I didn't think we could successfully accomplish what we set out to accomplish. I didn't think we could do it, but we managed to carry it off. We managed to pull it off. You could even do this with something simple like a football game. You could say, oh, I didn't think we were going to carry off that game, but in the end, we won through. We beat them, yeah? We beat the other team. We beat our opponents. Okay, so carry something off, pull something off, bring something off. It means successfully accomplish. Now, if you're dealing with timetables, you can often say, I find it difficult to pack in all the lessons into the busy timetable. Yeah, I have to pack in a lot of lessons. Packing can mean simply in your bag. When you pack things in your bag or in your suitcase, you're trying to squash them in, aren't you? You're trying to fit as many things in the suitcase as possible. Well, the same goes for timetables. If you're trying to pack in a lot of meetings or pack in a lot of projects, you're trying to put too much on your plate. You're trying to get as many things into your schedule as possible. I've got a lot of lessons packed in my schedule at the moment, and it's very tiring. It's really it tires me out. It wears me out. Okay, get by means to survive. So if you say, I found it difficult to get by as a student, it means I found it difficult to make ends meet. I found it difficult to survive on the money that I had as a student. Okay, and win out over. It's usually two emotions, and you say one emotion, one out over another emotion. We all have that moment where we vacillate between two positions, where we're not sure which emotion will win, where we feel both love and hate towards the same object. It's a very interesting psychological issue that we very often have. We have feelings of love, positive feelings, and feelings of hate, negative feelings, towards one and the same object, and one feeling will win out over the other feeling in the end. It depends on which one is the strongest. Okay, if you cock something up, botch something up, mess something up, you make a mistake, you make loads of mistakes, and it isn't successful. You mess it up, you muck it up as well. It's another one you can use, you muck it up. And there's a few swear words which sound a little bit like muck, which you could also use as well. So anything like that will mean make a mistake, make a mess of something, not successfully manage to do it. So if you mess up the exam, if you cock up the exam, you make a mistake. And this does sound like a rude word, but I assure you it is when you use it on its own. But with cock up, it's not rude. It's not swearing at all. Okay, relationships like marriages, engagements, and just simple romantic relationships can break down. But one of the partners will break off the marriage. One of the partners will break off the relationship, break off the engagement. And you could even say that one country has broken off the international relations with another country. They have broken off relations, they have broken off communication. So yeah, relationships break down, but you break off relationships. Remember that slight difference, because they're very easy to mix up. Yeah, another way where you're messing up in some kind of way, when you're mixing up two things. Now, if you come across something by chance, you run across it, you bump into is usually for people. I must say that's usually for people, but you bump into an old friend, but you come across or run across an old gold watch at the market perhaps, and you really like it and you decide to buy it. But you can also come across as, meaning be perceived to be, What I mean is, if you say, I came across rather rude at that party, it means people perceived me to be rather rude. Perhaps you were in a bad mood and you were quite short with people, you didn't really say please or thank you, and you didn't make an effort. You might come across as a little bit rude or a bit aloof, a little bit arrogant, whatever. If you end up or land up or wind up in a certain situation, it means in the end you finish up like that. You wind up like that. So it's all about ending or finishing in a certain way, in a certain position. Could be negative, could be positive. Okay, if you are very, very sick, your friend might say to you, how are you holding up? Or how are you bearing up? Meaning, how are you coping? Are you coping okay? So they're both about coping with something terrible. If someone in your family dies, somebody might say, how are you bearing up? You know, I know you lost someone who was very dear to you recently. How are you bearing up? How are you holding up? They're both very similar. Now, if you are riddled with holes, maybe you've had a gunfight and somebody has shot you hundreds of times, you'll be riddled with holes. But you could also be riddled with disease. You could be riddled with cancer. So this could be used with holes, with disease. It could even be used with other negative things. But it's mainly holes for some reason and disease. Not sure why, but you could say he was riddled with holes, he was riddled with disease, he was riddled with cancer. Now, it means just absolutely full of it, unfortunately. So full of holes, riddled with holes. If you safeguard against something, you take precautions against something. So that's all that one means. To safeguard against spreading infection, I always wash my hands. Not necessarily true, but nonetheless, that's the example I'm going to give you. To safeguard against spreading bacteria, I always wash my hands. Now, if you iron out the details of a contract, it means you maybe you bounce around some ideas in a meeting in order to thrash out the details of the contract, in order to make the details of the contract become clear and agree on the details of that contract. So, this comes from ironing, like ironing your shirt. You iron out creases, usually, in a shirt. When the shirt's all, got lines all over it, you need to iron out the creases. So if you iron out the details of the contract, you make all the details of the contract smooth and clear for everybody. So it's often iron out the details of the contract, but it could be iron out some other kind of details, where you make sure that everybody is in agreement about what the details will be. Now, if you smooth things over between two warring parties or between two people who are having an argument, you make things less aggressive between those two camps or two parties or two people. It means that you make sure that things go smoothly between them, that they're no longer arguing. So maybe you're having an argument with your parents and your sister tries to smooth things over between you and your parents. She tries to talk to your parents and explain that he's not so bad, you're perhaps overreacting, and then she comes and speaks to you and explains to you that this is normal, mum and dad should do this, that it's not such a bad thing. Now, if you make up for something, make up for your mistake, for example, then you compensate for your mistake. Anytime you make up for a mistake, you compensate for a mistake. But you can make up for anything. You can say, I want to make up for being so rude to you last night, and so here's a bunch of flowers. Yeah, you're compensating for being rude the previous night, and you're offering that person a bunch of flowers. So you're making it up to them with the bunch of flowers. You're making it up to them. These are both connected, but they're slightly different. Make up for, to compensate. Make it up to someone, to compensate someone, to make them feel better about some kind of bad behaviour or something like that on your part. Now, if you resign yourself to something, it means that you give in and surrender and accept a terrible fate or a terrible position that you have, a bad position. So maybe you were passed over for promotion. The boss decided not to give you the promotion and decided to give it to one of your colleagues, and you resign yourself to the fact that this happened. It means you accept it and say, okay, que sera, what will be will be. I'm just going to have to accept this difficult situation. Now, if you fall back on someone or resort to someone or turn to someone, it means use that person as a last resort. But it doesn't have to be a person. It could